Action.
Good morning, Ms. Simpson.
Good morning.
First off, before we conduct this interview, do you give permission for me to video and use this for
Yes.
educational research?
Yes,
Okay. First off, will you tell me a little bit about yourself and your current role?
I will. I've been a principal here at Brushfork Elementary School since October. Prior to that, I was a school counselor in the county for 5 years. And before that, I was a school secretary for about 12 years. So, kind of new to this role, but I have been a career student for the last 9 years. As a secretary, I started working toward a degree that would be able to move me into this position.
Okay. Will you also tell me about your experience with research in your current field?
Research pretty much drives everything that we do in education, and a lot of times it's informal research that we do, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're conducting research. But when we collect data on behavior or on academics for a student, or we do the things that we do for SAT team meetings or 504s, all of the data that we gather is basically a collection of research that we're going to use to help drive what we do to improve a student's academics.
Okay. How about with yourself, personal? Or have you yourself conducted any particular interviews or research or anything like that?
On the job this year, I'm sure I have done a lot, but I am working on my doctoral degree, so I am currently writing my dissertation. I just finished my first few chapters, and I have started the process of collecting my data. I am looking at the sustainability of truancy programs in the state. A lot of times people look at what we're doing to try to correct truancy, but nobody's looked at whether it really works or not. You know, after you stop doing your interventions, does the child's attendance drop back off, or does it continue to stay where it needs to be? So I've kind of spent the last couple of years really working hard on developing the first few chapters for my dissertation, and then I'm getting ready to dive into a whole lot of data this summer. That's my plan.
Okay. Tell me about research methods that you may use when conducting your educational research.
For me, the hardest part of my doctoral degree and determining and writing a dissertation was trying to figure out where I wanted to go. What is my life's passion? What do I want to do? That's going to be something that's worthwhile and meaningful, but also something that's not going to be torturous and tedious for me. I think through the program, I didn't really get a good foundation of that, and it was kind of like, you know, you figure it out. You know, I feel like I might have needed a little bit more direction and push maybe from my professors to help me figure that out. But identifying the problem and what I was going to research was like huge.
Okay.
And probably was one of the steps that took the longest. Once I identified an issue and decided that's really what I wanted to do, and I kind of picked that just because for the last probably 7 or 8 years since I became a counselor, I've really worked hard in the school setting on attendance and the truancy program that Mercer County Schools initiated with the judges. So I've been in this program since its inception, and now I really want to look at, you know, is it effective? Are we wasting our time? Is it something that we need to continue, or do we need to revamp? What do we need to do? So once I identify the problem, then it's pretty easy to find different literature, you know, that's out there related to the problem. For me, I've not found a whole lot of literature that identifies the sustainability of programs, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do that. My next step after doing my research is going to be, did I do the right things? Did I collect the right data? You know, am I looking in the right direction for the answers that I'm looking to find? So that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's
Okay.
interesting.
It sounds like it. Tell me about the steps, and you kind of just gave a little bit of that to conduct educational research. What are those steps that you would need?
You would definitely have to identify your problem and then clarify that through the literature that you're reading. Is it really something that you need to spend time looking into or not? Once you do that and you write your lit review, then it becomes a matter of figuring out what methods you're going to use to obtain your data. Do you want to do surveys? Do you want to do interviews? You know, are you going to just be pulling data straight from WEVUS? The majority of my dissertation is going to come directly from WEVUS data. I just want to know cold hard facts. So for me, that makes my research a little bit easier. I don't have to go through the internal research board for, certification to make sure that I'm doing it the right way and not harming human subjects. Once you do that, then it's a matter of putting out your surveys or gathering your data, plugging it into your statistical. My words are gone. Plugging it into the statistical program to figure out then whether or not you have significance or you don't have significance. And then finalizing that by pulling all your data together and looking at it to determine if those things are effective or they're not. And then writing a conclusion.
Okay. What are your thoughts about data collection?
It's tedious, it's stressful. And my biggest worry is, oh my gosh, how do I know if I'm looking at the right data? Because is looking at WEVA's data the most effective way to see if it is sustainable or not? And once I get into that, probably my guess would be that I'm going to have to maybe do some individual interviews and talk to people to try to get a better picture of why, if they're not successful, or maybe why they were. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is trying to determine what's going to be the best way for me to get the most amount of data that's going to help my project be beneficial not only to me but to other people.
Okay. Have you faced any obstacles when conducting educational research so far?
There are times when it's difficult to get the information that you need because of confidentiality and working with children. So that's probably one of the biggest obstacles in educational research, is that, there are times when you really could sit down with a student and dig in and get to the meat of things. But ethically, it's not a good thing to do, because you're dealing with a human subject and you could potentially harm them. So that's an obstacle. There are times when dealing with the red tape of the Board of Education, or even going to the state level to try to get the data that I need, becomes a problem. But it's something that there are ways to work around it. It just takes time and patience. And
do you have any advice on how to hurdle those challenges?
You have to be persistent and just stay on top of it. For me, the biggest thing was, once I found out that I needed to get approval from Mercer County Schools, and then that had to go to the county board. And then once the county board approves it, because I'm looking at other counties, I'm going to have to do the same in at least 8 counties in the state, because those are the counties that something similar to the Judges Truancy Program have been enacted. So I'm going to have to work on moving through those one county at a time, but it's keeping really good detailed notes, tracking what I'm doing, the process of how I'm doing it, so that when I go back to do my methodology, I can include all of that, so that it makes it easier for someone else if they want to continue my research or look a little deeper.
Okay. Tell me about your school.
We are a little school. We have 195 students here at Brush Fork. 100% are low SES. The kids come from a variety of different homes and different backgrounds. Almost 50% of our students would qualify federally as homeless. So our kids come into the building and they have experienced a lot of trauma. Their ACE scores would be 3 or 4, which constitutes, some severe issues for them, and all those things hinder their ability to learn. So we're working here at Brush Fork to try to bring in some things that will help teachers better understand the situations that our kids are coming from, and get a better grasp on how to handle those situations in the classroom, because we have to deal with our kids in a different way. We have kids who are raised by grandparents. We have kids who are doubled and tripled up in homes. They experience parents in jail, parents who are deceased, and all of these things hinder their ability to learn. So our goal is to try to pull in some things that are going to help us be better for our kids.
Okay. Would you have any advice for someone who's just starting to conduct educational research?
Keep going. There have been a few times when life gets busy for me, because it is a long process and it is something that's kind of stretched out over years. It's really easy to just shove it to the side and say, not doing that today. And for me, especially when I took this job, the demands were different for my time, and when I go home in the evening, 7 or 8 o'clock, I'm exhausted. So I have to make myself do that. And you know, there have been a couple of months where I didn't work on it at all, but I realized that I've got to keep pushing, I've got to keep going, you know, and not give up, because it is worth it in the end.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time
You're
to do this
welcome.
research interview.
You are very welcome.